know. I'm not, totally sure.
I think so, yeah.
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yes.
I'm not totally certain if I eat GMOs every day. I only know if something doesn't have GMOs in it because those products tend to label that they don't have GMOs. Like the almond milk I drink says that it's GMO free, but other than that, I'm not really sure.
I don't know.
No.
Yes.
Genetically modified organisms have genetic material that have been manipulated through genetic engineering. In crops, genetic engineering is normally done to make the organisms withstand herbicides or produce their own insecticide. GMOs are made using recombinant DNA, which basically inserts the genes from one source into the crop. Monsanto is a company that mass produces a lot of GMO seeds that farmers use, and they are called Roundup Ready seeds. They have been very widely used since their introduction to farmers about a decade ago, and in fact, most of the corn, soybeans, and cotton in America are Roundup Ready. The intention of Roundup Ready seeds was to grow taller plants and minimize weeds. When GM foods were first introduced, there were many proposed advantages to farming with them. One of the advantages was to create more yield for farmers while also being environmentally friendly by reducing the need for insecticides and decreasing the amount of CO2 emissions by reducing the need for plowing. The need for insecticides is reduced when GM foods contain the gene that encodes for a bacterial protein that is toxic to pests, but not to humans or animals. Regular insecticides are toxic to both pests and humans, so reducing the amount needed is a major health benefit. Scientists are currently working to produce GM crops that will have more nutritional value and are free of allergens. So far, they have been able to create foods that are enriched with vitamins such as rice enriched with vitamin A. However, pollen from the GM plants can spread to other plants, including weeds, which to this day has led to the evolution of 24 species of superweeds, which are now resistant to the herbicide Roundup. This has led to the usage of stronger herbicides, which have negative implications for the environment. Overall, pesticide use is an estimated 404 million pounds greater than if Roundup Ready crops had never been planted. Nowadays, Roundup Ready soy fields, which are theoretically supposed to reduce the need for Roundup, require about 3 times more Roundup than a non-GMO plant. This increased use of Roundup and other herbicides and pesticides also leaves more herbicide residue in the GM food. According to Monsanto and many researchers, GM foods are reliable, beneficial, and nutritionally identical to their natural counterparts. The fact that farmers are continuing to purchase the GM seeds each year suggests that they are experiencing success with them. However, this issue is extremely complicated because many of the health implications are still unknown, which makes it difficult to determine whether these GM foods are truly identical to non-GM foods. Many people are lobbying for GMOs to be labeled on the packages of processed foods because they want to be aware of what they are eating and where it came from, especially since the future implications are unknown. An analysis of 1,000 human samples for 4 different studies gave evidence that DNA fragments containing whole genes can avoid degradation when ingested in food and can enter the human circulation system. These DNA fragments were detected in the digestive tract and white blood cells of rainbow trouts fed genetically modified soybeans. Other studies reported similar results in goats, pigs, and mice. Basically, this means that the previous assumption that the DNA of GMOs would be entirely digested is now being contradicted. Since this is a newer invention, scientists are not sure what the long-term health implications are. It is a commonplace in today's society for manufacturers to use GM foods in their products, and because of a lack of labeling, many consumers are unaware that they are consuming GMOs at all.
Many manufacturers in the U.S., like Kraft, Campbell's, and PepsiCo, are lobbying against GMO labeling because they don't want widespread public fear to arise against consuming GMOs. This is what has occurred in the European Union because all GMOs are required to be labeled there. Most Europeans avoid GMO products thinking they are bad for their health when this is not necessarily proven to be true. In turn, this public commonplace that GMOs are bad has forced manufacturers to avoid using GMOs in their products there. On the other hand, the majority of the public in the U.S. would like to see GMOs labeled because the health implications of consuming them are still widely unknown. In addition, there are more products in the grocery store that contain GMOs than the average consumer knows.
So we know that the majority of foods containing soy, corn, and canola oil contain GMOs. So we decided to come to the grocery store to investigate the labeling on various different types of food. Nature Valley Oats and Honey Bars contain canola oil, soy, and corn flour, which are most often genetically modified in the United States. But the average consumer wouldn't know that because the GMO label is not on the outside of the box.
Cinnamon Cheerios contain cornmeal, cornstarch, corn syrup, and canola oil, but once again, there is no GMO label on the box.
Milanos have soy and cornstarch in them, but again, there's no GMO labelings. Now that you've heard all of this, do you want your foods labeled? Over 70% of Americans say that they do not want to consume genetically modified foods. 92% of Americans say that they want GMOs to be labeled. 64 other countries have required mandatory labeling of any foods containing GM foods. So then why aren't GMOs labeled today in the United States? It is because since 1992, the FDA has required the labeling of GM foods only when the GM food has some sort of nutritional or safety property that differs from what would be expected of the food, such as the uses of any gene from a potential allergen such as peanuts. Otherwise, food companies have the options to voluntarily label their food because the FDA reasons that they have no basis for saying that GM foods are significantly different from any naturally grown foods.
I think it would be a good thing to label if a product has GMOs in it. Generally, I like to know what's in the food that I'm eating, so I think it would be a good thing to label it.
Yeah, I think they should be labeled. I think people should know like what they're eating and like what's in their foods, and it's like their decision if they want to eat GMOs or not.
Yeah.
I think it's exactly necessary, but it's not harmful to have a label specifying that things are genetically modified, but most things are genetically modified, so I think that doesn't really matter.
The majority of the public wants GMOs to be labeled so that they know when they are consuming them. But many manufacturers fight the labeling by pointing out that consumers can already know if a product contains GMOs if it is verified non-GMO or organic. I urge you all to use the information available and decide where you stand on GMO labeling. Take your health into your own hands.